What's going on, guys? This is Empty Box, and today we're talking about Indy 500 because hype! Oh yes, the hype levels are at nearly uncontrollable levels. So excited, oh yeah! Anyways, as for what you're seeing in the background for the video, some more Indianapolis 500, the simulation. Just because it's easy to record, it's quick, it's easy. Don't need to set up the wheel or anything, just play it on the keyboard, and the background video is basically just background for these types of videos anyways, as most of you guys have hopefully have heard by now, or at least those of you guys who watch my channel. I'm kind of in the process of moving, so it's just like, hey, I'm going to take a break from the sim racing thing. And while yes, this is a sim racing game and this is the forerunner of the genre, it doesn't really count. So, yeah. Anyways, on to the Indy 500. We're going to have a couple storylines here and then a couple of picks, as is usual. So, first of all, I'm not going to start with Fernando Alonso. I'm going to bump that one down to number 2 because we've talked about Fernando Alonso for like the last month and a half regarding his trip to the Indy 500. But I'm going to start with a story I think is going to be a bigger story, and that is Honda. Specifically, Honda's reliability. They've had a couple of engine failures this month. They've had a couple of engine failures and engine electrical issues and gremlins earlier this year. Last year the Honda was definitely the package to have on the speedway side of things with the low downforce aero kit that they obviously run at Indianapolis. But on the road courses, the short ovals, street circuits, they were definitely behind the Chevrolets. Interestingly, here in 2018, I'm already so hyped for that next car. But 2017, Honda came out of the gate really, really strong on the street circuits to start the season. It certainly looked at the road courses and the ovals so far at Barber, Indianapolis, as well as Phoenix, that the gap between Honda and Chevy on the road courses has also closed down. So it appears that they've made some advances in the engine because that's where they have to be made, given the aero kit is the same as last year. However, if you recall Long Beach, Andretti Autosports as a whole just totally failed. All the engines or the electronics or one thing or another went all wrong on those cars, and they all got knocked out of the race. Very uncharacteristic. Usually in IndyCar the engines are pretty reliable, but it seems like there's been a lot of issues on the Honda side of thing, which, given their performance increase, seems like they're starting to push the power, starting to push things a little bit more aggressively than perhaps Chevrolet is, and we'll see if that is a factor. Honda certainly seems to have the advantage here at Indianapolis once again this year, as is expected. But if the engines aren't going to last, then they're going to either have to dial the engines back, in which case that negates the advantage, or alternatively, cross their fingers. I'm pretty sure they'll cross their fingers because one of the Hondas will definitely end up making it, and they'll be very fast. But definitely something to keep your eye on. And then on to the story that has dominated the discussion the last month and a half or so. Fernando Alonso running the Indy 500. Always big news when a Formula One driver steps outside that insulated glass bubble into something a bit different, and always good to see. And well, so far, up through qualifying and up through practice, basically the only thing left is the race itself. Fernando has performed fantastically. He's done everything that could possibly be expected and more of a rookie of Indianapolis Motor Speedway, as well as oval racing in general. But I want to say this. I kind of want to pump the brakes a little bit because I think a lot of people are getting kind of carried away in the Fernando hype. I think he does have a chance of winning the race. Let me say that up front. I think he has a legitimate chance in the position that he is in, not in terms of qualifying, but in the team. Andretti Autosports is the team to beat when it comes to Indianapolis Motor Speedway with the current formula, with things the way they are. They have 5 cars that are, racing at Indianapolis, plus the Michael Shank racing car. That's kind of like a side project, more or less, going on. But that allows them to get tremendous amounts of data, compile all the data, doing the debriefs and everything and all that, and just get the cars absolutely perfect. And they seem to have a very good package at Indianapolis between, how they're running the car. Something that they got is working really, really well. And that's why they all ran basically the same exact speed in qualifying. Besides Marco Andretti, who is just a couple ticks of a second slower. Basically the Andretti Autosports car, disregarding the Fast 9 in the qualifying rules, basically would have qualified 3rd through 6th, with Marco being bumped back to 9th. That's how strong that team is. All the cars are running that good because that is Andretti Autosports. at Indianapolis. Like, yes, he qualified fantastically in 5th position, better than what I would have expected. But looking at the way Andretti is prepared, knowing that they have the dominant engine and aero, in the Honda equipment, like, I'm not surprised at all. I kind of look at this as the benchmark is Kurt Busch in 2014. He came over from the world of NASCAR, obviously tons and tons and tons of oval experience, the most in the field actually because of how many NASCAR races there are. But tons of oval experience, came over to IndyCar for the Indy 500. Totally different ball game. He didn't run open wheel single seaters, whereas Fernando obviously immensely experienced in open wheel single seaters. And Kurt Busch in 2014, a year where the engines were basically at parity with one another, and they were still the spec aero. Team Penske was also very fast, so that's another 4 cars well up the order. 3 of them aren't in front of them this year, basically. But he basically ran 10th through 15th all race, didn't put a wheel wrong, did a very good job in the race, kind of ran very quietly, got the job done, did what you could possibly want and expect from a rookie in the situation that he's in. Couple late race wrecks, took out some competitors further up the order. He would go on to finish 6th. I think this year with Honda having the advantage, providing the reliability holds up, the curse of Fernando Alonso, we shall see. I think it's not unreasonable to be like, yeah, Fernando Alonso probably should finish about 5th. I think that is kind of, the baseline as to where he should finish. I just, at the end of the day, though, just think there's too many things that are going to be new, to keep Fernando from being truly competitive at the end of the race. Not in a very good finish sense, but winning the race sense, because that is, after all, what he is here for. That is all that matters. I just think it's a combination of, pit stops and, 33 pit boxes in the same length that the U.S. Grand Prix used to have 11 pit boxes for, and all the calamity there, the restarts, the initial start of the race, obviously always very tricky for anyone, always very exciting, and all that, just running a different race, not to mention adjusting the car, not just in terms of the in-car tools, but relating to the pit box and the strategists, should they take some wing out of the car, trim the car out late in the race, maybe get a little bit more speed, and try and get that final push to actually win the race. I think there's just a lot of things going on that it's a very big ask, even if he did qualify 5th. It's just a very, very big ask for him to end up winning this race. Not that it's impossible, but just pump the brakes. If it happens and you're hoping for it, then good. If it doesn't, hopefully he'll be back next year. As for the third and final story here in this video, will the real Team Penske please stand up? Please stand up? Please stand up. They just haven't had the pace. And that's kind of, both alarming, because it's very bizarre for Penske to be off the pace, not really super strong, essentially leading the Chevy charge at Indianapolis. But maybe they just kind of decided to go a different direction, knowing that they have the Chevy engine and aero, and it's not going to work as well as the Honda. They figured that basically the Hondas already have pole anyways, so let's just go ahead and focus on the race. Qualifying isn't that big of a deal outside of getting pole position, and the prestige and everything that goes along with that. So maybe they got something kind of a little bit up their sleeve. Maybe they're going to run a little bit better than what is expected. Getting the car to work in traffic, that could be a strength. And definitely something that actually matters, and it's very hard to judge that from practice speeds. So I really do think that they will go forward through the race, and I do think that, besides the fact that they have, the Chevy engine and aero, I mean, you got Juan Pablo Montoya, Helio Castroneves, it's Indianapolis, like, those two guys will find a way to get in the mix. As for predictions, I'm not going to buck the trend here. I'm not going to bet against the favorite, because I see no reason to bet against the favorite, and I mean this legitimately. I think Scott Dixon will pick up his 2nd Indianapolis 500, because it just seems like it's about time he picks up that 2nd win. He's got the Honda equipment, running for Ganassi, one of the best teams in the business. He's the best driver in the series, I think, bar none. Fight me on that one, but it's just one of those things where he's run so well at Indianapolis. He's run so well everywhere. The pieces are right there on the table, and I think this is a race where everything just kind of goes his way, and it's just a very Scott Dixon-like race. kind of underwhelming and unassuming at the front, but probably pretty well in control. As for a more interesting pick than picking the guy who's on pole and one of the best drivers in the series, Marco Andretti. Brian Herta is calling the strategy for Marco Andretti. You recall he called the strategy for Rossi last year. He called the strategy for Weldon in 2011. Marco always runs really well at the speedway. Yeah, he's been running better this year than what he has in years past, even if the results haven't necessarily shown it as well as they perhaps should. I think this could actually be a year where he is competitive entirely, not like he kind of disappears 3/4 of the way through the race. So look for him to actually be competitive at the front if you're looking for a goofy, slightly strange pick, even though it shouldn't necessarily be considered slightly strange. As for my ultra bold prediction, generally made with a whole helping of sarcasm, but at the same time, slight seriousness, Charlie Kimball will finish ahead of Fernando Alonso in the 2017 Indianapolis 500. That's a bet for you guys right there. I don't know what we're betting, but we're probably betting something. But in all seriousness, I think Charlie's going to run really well this race. He always seems to show up at these bigger speedway races for one reason or another. Or alternatively, he crashes basically in an instant because Charlie Kimball getting Charlie Kimball. But, look for him to have a good run and finish much higher than expected. Obviously, with the Ganassi, granted, the B team in Ganassi, the 9 and 10 have always been way better than the other two cars that Ganassi has fielded. But, with the Honda equipment and everything, and Charlie being a driver that can somehow generally seem to perform better in these types of races, maybe a little bit off the wall strategy, who knows? Charlie Kimball could be a competitor and nobody would expect it at all because, again, he's IndyCar's Mr. Invisible, even with that bright neon green on his car. So, who knows? Totally ridiculous. I definitely would not put any money on the guy. But, you know what? Hey, if you're looking for a long shot, I am not responsible for when Charlie Kimball does Charlie Kimball things. Just remember that. Anyways, I hope you guys are as hyped up for the Indianapolis 500 as I am, because I'm hyped. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys enjoyed the race. Bye.